The whispering trees. In the dense forest of the Pacific Northwest, Tom, an avid backpacker, decided to venture alone into a remote trail known for its solitude. On the second night, as he was drifting off to sleep, he was jolted awake by faint whispers. He initially dismissed it as the wind rustling through the trees. However, as the whispers grew louder and seemed to come from all directions, he became unnerved. When Tom emerged from his tent to investigate, he saw shadows moving among the trees. He tried to follow the sound, but only found his camp's lantern swinging erratically, though no wind was blowing. The whispers continued, growing more frantic. Unable to shake the feeling of being watched, Tom packed up his camp in a frenzy and hiked back to civilization at dawn. He later learned that locals spoke of a group of people who had disappeared in that area decades ago, their voices said to still linger in the forest. The silent campfire. Jessica was on a solo backpacking trip in the rugged mountains of Colorado. She set up her campfire and prepared for a cozy evening. As the sun set, she heard the sound of footsteps approaching her campsite, which she initially thought was another hiker. However, when she called out and received no response, the footsteps stopped abruptly. Curious, Jessica went to check but found no one around. Her campfire, which had been blazing, was now eerily silent and cold despite the clear weather. She noticed that her backpack had been opened, but nothing was missing. Feeling uneasy, she stayed up all night with her flashlight on, constantly scanning her surroundings. By morning, she discovered strange, almost ritualistic symbols carved into the nearby trees. She left the area immediately, and later learned that the symbols were associated with ancient, forgotten rites. The phantom hiker Mike, an experienced solo backpacker, chose to explore a lesser-known trail in the Appalachian Mountains. On the first night, he noticed a figure in the distance, seemingly following him from afar. He thought it might be another hiker, so he didn't pay much attention. As days went by, the figure's presence grew more prominent. Each night, Mike would hear footsteps near his campsite, but never see anyone. The figure seemed to be always just out of sight. One night, he finally confronted the figure, only to find no one there. His campsite was eerily undisturbed. Mike left the trail the next morning and later discovered that a hiker had vanished in that area years before, and the figure was rumored to be their restless spirit, the haunted shelter. Sarah was hiking alone through the Sierra Nevada when she came across an old, abandoned shelter. It seemed like a perfect place to spend the night, so she decided to stay. As she settled in, she noticed strange scratches on the wooden walls and a sense of unease. In the middle of the night, she was awoken by the sound of heavy breathing and footsteps approaching the shelter. When she looked out, she saw nothing but shadows. The next morning, she found her belongings had been moved around, though she was sure she had locked up properly. The local ranger later told her that the shelter had a history of mysterious disappearances and was considered haunted by previous hikers. The disappearing trail. While hiking alone in the dense forests of the Adirondacks, Alex found himself lost after a series of unexpected detours. The trail seemed to shift, and landmarks he had previously seen were no longer visible. He tried retracing his steps, but only ended up deeper in the woods. As night fell, he set up camp and was startled by the sudden appearance of what looked like an old, dilapidated cabin. Desperate for shelter, he entered but found it completely empty. The next morning, the cabin was gone, and Alex discovered he had been walking in circles around his campsite. When he finally emerged from the forest, he was told by locals that the cabin was rumored to appear only to those who were hopelessly lost, and those who entered never found their way back. The stranger's warning. Emily was hiking alone in the remote wilderness of the Yukon. On the second day, she encountered a rugged-looking man who warned her of an impending storm and offered to guide her to safety. Trusting his intentions, she followed him. As they hiked, the man began telling eerie stories about people who had gone missing in the area. Emily grew increasingly uneasy but kept following him. the man suddenly disappeared without a trace, leaving Emily to navigate the worsening weather on her own. She managed to find shelter, but noticed that the man had left behind a tattered notebook filled with strange, unsettling drawings and notes about the lost and forgotten. Emily made it back safely, but couldn't shake the feeling that the man was more than he appeared, possibly a spectral figure meant to warn or guide those in dire situations.